What's up, y'all? So I started reading this book, Culture of Critique, the famous Culture of Critique, which I had been intimidated from reading because this damn book is like 550 pages or something like this. So I always thought about it and then took a look and I was like, yeah, maybe not. But I started reading it, just the intro. The intro is very long, but kind of sums up his whole thesis and where he's going. I pretty much knew I was going to disagree, and I had been exposed to, I think I might have read some of the intro before, but I was pretty sure I was going to disagree with the book and everything. But God, I'm shocked at just how stupid and ridiculous this fucking book is based on a first impression. Like, I never realized that Mr. McDonald, I'm going to call him Old McDonald. I never realized Old McDonald is a racial determinist and sees the whole world through the lens of, like conflict between the races. And his whole explanation is all the races except white people are, like out for themselves, trying to get resources. The ends justify the means to get whatever it is they want. But poor white people aren't equipped for this because they evolved in trusting society, in high trusting societies, and so go out of their way to help people and stuff like this. First of all, I don't think history bears this out. Where like Europeans went around the world and were like, oh God, we're just so trusting and charitable. How can we help all these poor white and brown people and Asian people? I think there was maybe some good intentions by bringing them Christianity as a way to help them. Well, they called it the white man's burden, right? But I wouldn't go so far as to say this was a charitable operation or even had charity as its main motivation, but was, maybe a justification for taking over the whole world or 2/3 of it. So it's just pretty shocking that a so-called academic professor, they're supposed to be the most learned people in our society, and he's basically saying like Middle Eastern people, Jews, others, they're motivated by selfish motivations, but white people are charitable to some degree. This is kind of simplifying what he's saying. And basically, Jewish actions are all done in order to further their own agenda, whether that be, what movements were they involved in? Let's see, like desegregation, civil rights. This was all just a ploy to fuck with white people. No charitable or real motivations to help the downtrodden there. It was all just to ploy a wedge. So I don't know. It's pretty crazy. It's basically taking facts and then building a narrative to help him further his own worldview. That's what he's doing. I wonder what his explanation would be for why white Christians freed the slaves and gave them citizenship. In that case, I'm sure it would be charity, because the white people are in trusting societies and they're altruistic. So that's why they did it. But when the Jews do it, it's to destroy white people, by race mixing. And so these are kind of where his arguments lead. Grossly simplistic, grossly asinine, I would say, and ridiculous. Like I'm saying, I didn't realize he was a racial determinist. And so he has these explanations for like why Jews behave the way they do, because they evolved in the desert in groups, and everything was a competition for resources. But the Europeans evolved in a cold weather climate, And so they needed this superior intellect, and also they evolved to be trusting. I never liked these narratives. They seem just so like random and arbitrary, like somebody just picked them because they thought it was a good explanation to explain phenomena, but are most probably complete bullshit. Like what? Surviving the ice ages or surviving a really harsh winter takes superior planning and intellect, but surviving in the desert doesn't. I mean, it doesn't take planning to figure out how to conserve water so you don't die in the Sahara Desert or some other place. So I don't know, I never like these explanations. They seem ridiculous and simplistic, and while people want to believe them, why are you gonna lie to yourself? You know what I mean? So I haven't gotten into the meat of the book. It's just he's kind of laying out his thesis that Jews are basically a race, and if they're not a race, then their behavior is biologically, genetically determined, which I don't buy that right off the bat. Like, I just don't buy this, because the consensus now is, since the days of eugenics and when the racialists reigned supreme, the trend since then is to discover that a lot of this stuff that they thought was bogus science, you know, like the drug addict, the hooker, the drunkard, just because they're at the bottom of society and struggling doesn't mean they have defective genes. You know, sometimes people just end up in horrible conditions because they have bad luck, they're born into a bad situation. And just to explain everything genetically, you know, maybe somebody has the genes to be an alcoholic, okay, or genes can play a role in drug addiction, okay, but probably where you're raised and how you're raised plays a bigger role than genetic determination. So I find his explanations for why white people behave altruistically and trustingly, which isn't even an accurate depiction of how European white culture has conducted itself throughout history. Maybe at periods of time. In other periods of time, they were extremely ethnocentric, extremely racialist. You know, like genocidally aggressive peoples. And other times they were nice and peaceful. Also depends on the country and the people in the region. So he just lays out these grossly simplistic narratives as that how people are, how they behave, and then adopts other grossly simplistic but also completely asinine rationalizations for why and how people conduct themselves. So, I don't know, in my mind, people are largely impacted by the way they're raised, the culture they're raised in. You know, if you're going to raise a German through the Nazi youth and indoctrinate them, the chances of them becoming, you know, a potentially genocidal member of the SS are exponentially higher than if that same person is raised in an open democratic society where they're not raised in an environment where they're demonizing other people. The genes are exactly the same. The circumstances are completely different. So this book to me just appears to be an anachronistic, simplistic, racialistic view at group dynamics based on somebody whose worldview is well served through looking at it through those lenses. Obviously somebody who sees themselves as a white European identitarian advocate. And so to reinforce that worldview, he needs these narratives and these viewpoints. White people and Europeans are a race, and they have their ways, and those ways and that race are threatened by others, whether it be Jews or non-whites, because they have different genes and they act in a way that's selfish and is potentially harmful to white people. So this is what he's laying out. It already appears to be bullshit. I've been entertained by just some of the things said in this book. He started quoting some more extreme sects of Judaism where they see themselves as a different people, potentially even a different race. So he's trying to use this to support his ideology that Jews are a race, or at least a biologically determined entity that acts a certain way. Like, yeah, I would say Judaism overall, and certainly sects of it, are very ethnocentric. Now, a lot of people take these Talmud quotes out of context to try to give the impression that they think Jews are gods and everybody else is like cattle to be used. I've never seen this expressed in my experience with Judaism. I think these quotes are taken out of context, and I'm sure there are some extreme sects that might think something like this or something along those lines. But again, this doesn't serve as a proper explanation for how these people behaved, many of them secular, when they got to the United States. So, I don't know. I've read a very small portion, but it already appears to be ridiculously stupid. So, I'm just making this. But we'll see how it goes. Anyone has a comment, feel free to leave it. Everyone have a good day.